what does Halloween mean to me? So I was raised in church, very religious, and when I was a kid, Halloween was something that was very taboo. It was something that I was not allowed to participate in. I remember the other kids in children's church telling me that Halloween was the devil's birthday. It was the opposite of Christmas. It was some evil holiday where you'd get razor blades in your candy and they would try to get you, and if you left your pets outside, someone would take it and turn it into a witch or something crazy like that. The older I got, the more I realized that was crazy, and it was just a fun holiday to express yourself in weird, spooky ways. I think honestly the reason I do like Halloween so much is that it was something I wasn't allowed to be a part of for so long. I've always felt very drawn to the macabre and the weird and the bizarre, and Halloween's a really perfect holiday to express those feelings. It's one of those holidays where you don't have to dress like everybody else. You don't have to be normal. You can be weird. You can be unusual. You can have fun and express yourself in ways that normally you can't. And so that's why I think Halloween can be such an important, special holiday for people who just like to put themselves out there in different ways. They can be more artistic, they can be more fun, they can be more just themselves essentially. So that's why I think Halloween is really important. For me, it means a lot more about just being able to feel accepted in your own skin. It might not be that deep, it's just a holiday, but still, it's one of those things where sometimes people don't get to feel that way. I personally have always felt very much like I had to conform to other people's ideas. And so Halloween was really a time where you can, do something scary, do something weird, do something unusual, watch the movies people don't like, eat the candy that's not good for you, like do all the fun stuff that you really want to do that you're not able to do normally, all because of this one particular magical holiday.
What does Halloween mean to me? Probably candy still comes to mind. I don't know if that's great for, not having trick-or-treated for the last 17 years of my life, but I would still say free candy. And then I have this one real weird memory of going trick-or-treating at my grandma's house with my dad, and for some reason my stepmom let me cut up her wedding dress into a zombie prom dress, and it was ugly. But I loved it, and I got a bunch of candy that year. And those people were rich.
What does Halloween mean to me? When I was little, maybe 5 or 6, I can remember above all other things this incredible excitement when I felt the air starting to get chilly. I knew that meant it was getting closer and closer to my favorite holiday, Halloween. Halloween is a culmination of so many things that spark joy for me. I love the whimsical aspects of makeup and costumes, the sweet and sour aspects of all the different novelty candies that only come out during that time of year. And as an adult, I've grown really fond of the cultural and spiritual aspects of various things connected to All Hallows Eve, All Saints Day, and Dia de Muertos. Halloween simply is the magic that lives in all of us.
By the way, this was the makeup that I was doing earlier. Feeling so cute.
Thinking about Halloween reminds me of the times as a kid when all I wanted to do was dress up and get candy and just have a ton of fun. And as an adult, I yearn for the nostalgia of what I ignored as a kid. The month leading up to Halloween in itself feels entirely different than the rest of the year. Um, Stores start putting out decorations, stuff starts smelling different, and you would just like wish that the summer would end so you could wear long sleeves again. Um, when I mean smells, I'm not just talking about like falling leaves or pumpkin spice, but the literal plastic packages of Halloween masks and decor, the bags of candy, sweetness, like filling up the air, especially the candy corn. The season is finally starting when I can just go somewhere and just smell it. Like you walk outside and you can smell it in the air. It's kind of like when it snows. When it comes to Halloween, it's this scent that I don't even think that I could bottle it and sell it in order to explain what it is like.
Halloween means a chance to be someone else for a day. It means to explore different sides of yourself, whether that be your creative side or your spooky side.
What is my favorite part of Halloween? I think my favorite part of Halloween is kind of a toss-up. I'm really big on costumes. Ask anyone who knows me, I've always been big into costumes. Even when I wasn't allowed to celebrate Halloween, I'd make people dress up for my birthday. I would take any opportunity to make a costume, do some sort of look, do some sort of different, unusual mask, maybe get some hairspray, change something. I've always been big on costumes, so I would have to say costumes are probably one of my favorite parts of Halloween. But I also am a big horror movie fan, a big horror buff. I love horror movies. I love scary movies. I love anything kind of freaky and weird, anything kind of creepy and off. So I do love the horror movies. But then for me, on my personal level, because those are very obvious ones. People love costumes, people love horror movies. But for me, I have a really special place for horror movie plush stuffed animals. I collected them ever since I was a little kid, and I still have my whole collection of monster stuffed animals. I love them so, so much, and I try to get a new one every year. I'm a big fan of that. So I do think that's one of my favorite things for Halloween are getting Halloween plushes, Halloween merch. I think all three of those things really together are what make Halloween special to me. Like getting to watch a scary movie, wearing a weird costume, and going out and buying some silly plush that you wouldn't expect. You know, like who knew you needed a ghost face killer plushie? Who knew you needed a Michael Myers plushie? Those are killers, but I have a cute little plushie that I can put on my bed for the Halloween season.
My favorite part of Halloween? Probably getting to dress up and try on a whole nother person for size, I guess. So, like, you can still be you as, like, a sexy pirate. You can be like Taylor, the sexy pirate. You don't have to know anything about pirates or being sexy or even really being Taylor anymore. It's nice.
What is my favorite part of Halloween? As a kid, nothing could beat getting a bunch of candy. I especially loved when in school they would let you wear your costume and plan all the different crafts, and in class parties, everything was truly innocent and wonderful. As an adult, I love decorating for Halloween and creating various makeup looks to wear leading up to Halloween. But all that being said, the movies that came out, whether they're spine tingling, spooky thrillers for the adults, or something a bit sweeter for the whole family to enjoy, they have to be my favorite part about Halloween. I couldn't tell you how many times I've watched Beetlejuice, Scream, Casper, Hocus Pocus, or the original Halloween. Movies connect to so many happy memories for me, and the Halloween themed ones especially are my favorites.
So, I thought it would be a fun time to walk in the rain because I love the rain. But, I don't know if you can tell, but that is hail hitting my car right now. This is probably about, I don't know, like dime size or something smaller. Honestly though, I love shit like this. I love the rain, and this is something that I associate with fall, and oh shit. It makes me nostalgic to have these rainstorms. It makes me so happy.
Dressing up is probably my favorite thing to do during the Halloween season. Sometimes I will plan my next costume the night of Halloween and share it like on Facebook or anything like that so I don't forget. Whereas back in the day, it would be, oh gosh, Halloween's coming up. When am I going to be? Go to the store, look at my closet, and then we would just pick it that night. But as an adult, I get to plan everything ahead of time. And when I worked for Goodwill, I would dress up every single day that I worked in order to promote the Halloween headquarters. I say that in parentheses because that's what they said that we were. I loved doing that with the company, so much so that I actually ended up on WFXR News in my Clementine costume from the Walking Dead video game. And almost all of my costumes are made specifically from thrift or stuff that I have in my closet, or a simple like white t-shirt that I decide to do stuff with. And dressing up itself is my favorite thing.
Halloween is getting to be scary or spooky, and also getting scared. I love the thrill of a scary or spooky things. I love dressing up as something spooky or watching my favorite scary movie. The adrenaline is by far the best part. It's like a rush.
What is my favorite Halloween candy? That's a hard one. I feel like I have to go with probably like a classic, like the peanut butter pumpkins, like the Reese's peanut butter pumpkins. Yeah, Reese's cups are great, but the pumpkins come out that time of year, and I've always felt like I want more peanut butter in my Reese's. So like getting the pumpkins are so good. I'm a big fan of those. I think it's just it had so much extra peanut butter, which is always fun. Obviously, like all the candy's good. We love candy, but I think I would probably say the peanut butter pumpkins are my favorite. That or I mean I love sour candies. I'm a big gummy worm person, but I get that all year round. So if I had to pick like a particular like Halloween candy, I would say the Reese's pumpkins, just because they are the special shape. They are the way they make them special for that one time a year. And like let's face it, you get that in a big bowl of candy, and like you're going to pick a piece of candy up, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. And I don't know if it really counts, but like I think caramel apples are a really good one. I always feel like caramel apples are associated pretty well with Halloween, candy apples, caramel apples. I've always been more of a caramel apple person myself, but like I think that's just a really fun candy. Again, I think it might just be a treat, but it's a fun Halloween kind of experience either way. But yeah, like all the candies are good, obviously. Oh, and popcorn balls. Oh, popcorn balls are so good. So many people don't like them, and they're like, oh, they're gross, weird. I love a popcorn ball. Like I all year round I'll eat popcorn at the movies, whatever. But a popcorn ball just hits different. I mean, especially when you get that big box and you get like 12 in a box or whatever, and just like you can just have them. You can just have them lying around. It's just a fun shape. I was like, like it's just such a fun, different snack. Again, I don't know if that counts as a candy, but I would definitely say that's one of my favorite Halloween treats for sure.
is my favorite Halloween candy? Does it have to be like specifically for Halloween? Is there like a special Halloween release of these candies? Because like I always enjoy like the special shaped like Reese's that they come out with. I'm not a big Reese's peanut butter cup girl. I don't like the hard edge. When that gets into my tooth, I'm like, get out of here. But then a nice rounded pumpkin edge, I can get with that. A little pointed bat. That's not what a bat makes. Sorry, I don't know what a bat is.
What are my favorite Halloween candies? I definitely struggle choosing just one, so here's my top 3 in no particular order. Reese Cups, specifically the pumpkins. I swear the fun shapes taste better than the regular cups. Ask anybody. I think they'll agree with me. Ooh, I know this one is a polarizing one. Candy corn and mellow cream pumpkins. I know, but I love them. I think they're so nostalgic and they make me happy. And I like to say that I'm a honeybee at heart, so anything that's got honey in it is good to me. All right. And then finally, I'd probably have to say the caramel apple suckers. These are my favorite, I think. I know you can get them year-round, but there's something so magical and special about looking in through your Halloween haul of candy and seeing one of those bad boys in your pumpkin at the end of the night. It's just a different feeling when it's by chance rather than you buying it yourself. You know what I mean?
when it comes to Halloween and the costumes, I know that originally it was for a completely different purpose, but nowadays it's like I get to be somebody or something entirely different than what I am every day. And it's helpful because everybody, well, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people tend to have a hard time with like who they are, their body image and stuff. And some days they just wish that they were somebody else for a little while. And honestly, it's really refreshing and it's helpful. And I know that even as a kid, I enjoyed being a wicked witch or a vampire of the night. Or there was one Halloween when my sister and I both decided to be Tiffany from Chucky, like Jennifer Tilly's doll, Tiffany. And it looked adorable. I wish I had a picture of it. It was crazy. But like being a different person made the Halloween even better. And living in a small town in Virginia makes it sometimes hard to enjoy like cooler weather during Halloween. But I can't help remember one year where it snowed. I don't remember the year, but it was when I was younger for sure, probably middle school. Um, my sister and I wanted to be Beavis and Butthead since the costumes were simple and we thought they would be recognizable. But the only person who actually got noticed was her boyfriend at the time, who dressed up as Stuart with the winger shirt on, who's still in Beavis and Butthead, but was an extra character. We were walking down a place called Town and Country. It was a little easier when we were younger to do these streets than like the crazy Longwood, which we can talk about later. People almost refused us candy, thinking we weren't even in costume. My sister and I were practically freezing our butts off. We were wearing shorts and t-shirts on with, like, I had the Metallica shirt on, she had an AC/DC shirt on, and they just would look at us and they thought that we weren't even doing anything, like we weren't creative at all. But unfortunately, that was just the case. The weather didn't call for lowering temperatures, let alone snow, but when a single flurry landed on my pillowcase of pitiful candy, I was flabbergasted. It's snowing, it's snowing. A few kids ahead of us were running around in their costumes with long sleeves, and here we were, fools. The snow probably only lasted a few minutes, but it was just enough time for me to never forget that Halloween.
There's a lot of good candies out there, but my favorite Halloween candy is definitely a Milky Way. You could say it's out of this world.
What's my favorite Halloween memory? That's a hard one. I feel like I have a lot of really good memories around Halloween, but if you had to like ask me what's your absolute favorite Halloween memory. So, when I was younger, I collected a lot of Halloween plushes, Halloween monster stuffed animals, stuff like that. And there was this one year in particular where I got this one plush from a claw machine. I was very into claw machines at the time and I was getting pretty good at them. And I had won this kind of Dia de Muertos Halloween plush. She's kind of like a bride, like a corpse bride-esque character. She had a yellow wedding dress on, and she was kind of like a zombie Frankenstein monster, and I absolutely loved her, and I was obsessed with her, and that was like a really special memory to win her. But I wanted to get her the groom because they had like a skeleton, kind of a knockoff Jack Skellington type plushie, and I wanted her because they were bride and groom. I was really obsessed with that, and I wanted to make sure I could have them together because they were supposed to go together, and I could not win him for the life of me. And then it was Halloween night, and it was just me and my mom, and I really wanted to get him before Halloween was over, because I know once Halloween was over, I wasn't going to see him again for at least a year, if ever again. And so my mom took me to every single store because they were all sold out of him. Nobody had the skeleton anymore. Everyone had won him, or they're all gone. So we went to every single store all around our neighborhood, everywhere, nothing. We went out of town even. We went a couple towns over, nothing. So my mom took me to, as like a consolation prize, took me to the local Mexican restaurant. We went in there. We celebrated some of their Dia de Muertos celebrations with them, which was fun because that's what the plushies I was looking for. And so we celebrated them, and I told them what I was looking for, and they, cheered me on. And it was one of those things where I was about to give up hope. And we decided one last try. We stopped at one last store on the way home, and there was one single skeleton plushie left in the claw machine. And I was almost out of quarters at this point because I had been looking, I've been searching, and I've been using my coins, and I had a couple quarters left, and I put the final quarter in, and I won him, and I got my skeleton plushie to go with my Dia de Muertos bride. So that was probably my favorite memory, and when I think of Halloween, I think of that day. To this day, I still like to go get like Mexican food on Halloween. I like to go and do that as like a little celebration of that time in my life. And I still collect monster stuffed animals and monster plushes, and that's just probably my favorite memory when I think of Halloween. That's like what Halloween was to me.
My favorite Halloween memory would be, I can't remember what year it was, but the George Clooney Batman had just come out. And, the one with the nipples on the suit. They were at the peak of, like, Batgirl costumes coming out. And for some reason, they just made a plastic mask with hair on it and everything. So even though I had blonde hair, and I had that haircut, and all I had to do was wear the mask, I wore that whole plastic face thing the entire time. And then, like, I had this big red ridge right here because I was just running around like crazy, sweating in that thing. A not so happy memory from that is that my brother had one of those talking "enter if you dare" bags, and that was really traumatizing to me. He kept being like, "Here, you can get a piece of candy," and then he'd yank it away, and then he'd be like, "Wah ha ha," and I was like 4, so.
What is my favorite Halloween memory? This is hard for me because I think my favorite memories in general are related to Halloween. I guess it's pretty simple, just trick or treating with friends and family. And then when we got home each year, we would go over to my friend Brooke's apartment where her and her dad, Danny, would always throw a fun Halloween party with goodie bags, cake, dancing, and singing the Monster Mash, of course. Every year, I'd have to bribe my mom with candy so I could stay over there longer. And she'd always say yes to a bag full of Three Musketeers and Snickers. And honestly, I would love to be able to go back and do that one more time. I miss being that little, and I miss the magic that came with Halloween as a child.
Um, Baking Halloween treats is a given during the season. Caramel apples, cinnamon sugar donuts, those Pillsbury sugar cookies, pumpkin spice, anything and everything. I also like making witch's fingers, which is pretty much like simple shortbread cookies dyed green with an almond for the witch's nail. Um, Lots of people loved those. They would dip it in like milk and everything. It was really fun. I used to dress up as Mrs. Lovitz a lot and started making meat pies to bring the Halloween parties. And I really experimented with like food coloring. And at first, I started with mac and cheese because I wanted the kids to still be able to eat them and think that it was fun. But I soon gave up on that and decided to do like real Irish meat pies in a mini form, and I would bring them, and they are still one of my favorite foods to bring. And I mean, it's simply like meat, onions, celery, like something savory, really savory. And then the gravy, I would just pop some red food dye in that, and then it would look like regular meat that was not raw, like actually cooked with blood gravy. And it was a whole lot of fun.
Halloween to me as an adult feels like childhood again. You get to dress up, eat as much candy as you want, of course. Especially as an adult, that feeling is hard to come by. Halloween is a chance to express yourself like you did as a child.
what does Halloween feel like to me? Halloween feels to me like that chill in the air. That scariness where it's just the end of fall, right before you have to get into the winter months, right before you have to get into the time where it starts getting more like wholesome and getting the Christmas decorations out. Halloween's that last resort of like, it's the final wind blowing through of what like autumn feels like. It's the final moment where you can kind of really express that. It's always that chill in the air where it gets into really cold out, where the leaves have turned and there's that beautiful bright orange where they look like they're on fire. And it feels like there's a certain level of magic in the air. A breeze could blow by and anything could happen. It's a time where everything gets to be more mysterious and more dark, where it can be just a whole new horizon of weird things. You know what the holidays are going to bring to you. You don't know what the rest of the year is going to bring to you. But Halloween can be that time where it's that like changing of the seasons. It's like the true marker of what autumn feels like. It doesn't have to be hot summer months where you're running around sweating. It doesn't have to be spring where it's kind of rainy and weird and you have to like wear like pastels. But like Halloween's that part of autumn where you really get to embrace the cold almost. You get to embrace the winter wear where everything gets to start turning around for the better. And all of a sudden, for me at least, as somebody who loves autumn in those times of year, it's just, that's the epitome of it. It's like the moment where this is the big event. This is the point where this matters the most and where you're like, yeah, it's spooky and scary. And then you get that camaraderie where you get to meet all the other people who are into Halloween, who are into the same kind of creepy, weird stuff. You know, you wear a really cool costume out with your friends or with your family, and then somebody will recognize you. Somebody will be like, hey, you're wearing that. And you're like, yeah, I am. And then they're wearing something cool and you can talk about it. It makes like friends. It opens doors to new connections with different people. I think it can be a really good way to build community and build friendships that you might not have had otherwise. And I just think it's a fun way to make a special kind of community over a very special time of year.
What does Halloween feel like to me? You know, when you were in like school and on the weekend before like Halloween or something was happening in like the fall where the leaves would start to change, they'd give you these like scholastic kind of like book fair looking catalog things, and they'd always come with one of those highlight magazines for free. And those were the best ones, like the Halloween edition, because they were always a little creepy. They always reminded you a little bit of an I Spy book, which was like our first liminal space. And I just really appreciated that. That's what really comes to mind.
Let's talk about Longwood. In our hometown in Little Virginia, in Bedford, we are the home of the D-Day Memorial. So technically we are supposed to be a tourist trap. Not to mention we have the lake, Smith Mountain Lake, and the Peaks of Otter, at which Dirty Dancing was filmed, which is super fun. So technically this is a tourist town, but I personally don't see a whole lot of tourists. But when it comes to Halloween, you could go about your day in this town and think that it had a minuscule population of barely anything, and that maybe you would see the most people at a public school or the Walmart. But when it comes to Halloween on Longwood Avenue, it is as if it is the only night to be alive as a child. Longwood Avenue itself stretches about 1.2 miles. But if you're like me, you gotta park your car somewhere, or your mother or your father or whoever you're with had to park their car somewhere so you can start walking down the street. Now, so it's probably more like 1.5 miles, and that's only one way. Because you're gonna have to walk back. So imagine walking 3 miles in order to fill your sacks full of candy. Most of the houses on Longwood give out candy. Most of them spend well over $100, $200 in order to last most of the night to give out candy. This is kind of hard for a child. Halloween shows your physical endurance for sure in order to get the candy that you want. Trick-or-treating around here starts at about 4:30, 5 o'clock, because half the time Halloween ends up on a school night. Boo. But there's also kids who have to be in bed by certain times, and some who are super afraid of the dark, but it's Halloween, so you should just deal with it and embrace the spooky. I myself loved going down Longwood as a kid as well as an adult, because I had the honor to trick-or-treat with my nieces. And I have some pictures of my sister and her daughter, my niece Cambria, in their Bluey and Bingo costumes, and they had a ball this past year. There's a lot of decorations, and some houses go all out. I know that there's 2 specific houses that I definitely remember. One of them is a beautifully brand new built house. Well, it looks brand new, but it's been there for a few years. They were having a party at the same time that they had people giving out candy. So they were having live concert shows in one half of their home that you could hear from the street. People actually playing like instruments and singing, and there was karaoke, and it was a whole lot of fun, and they were giving out candy as well. There's another person down the street that I know their son pretty well now, and she does creepy dolls every year. Her house is yellow, so she would hang a doll up in her very, very tiny circular window at the very, very top of her house, and sometimes she would forget that it was there, and it would stay all the way until Christmas. But she does creepy dolls, and they line up from her porch all the way down to the front where she gives out candy. And it's one of the craziest houses, I think, on the block. You would be amazed at the inside of this home. And she loves it when people ask to see the inside because it kind of looks like an I Spy book. It's pretty insane. There is another home that during COVID especially, because I know that that was very hard for people who wanted to go trick-or-treating because it was too scary to give out candy to children when you don't know where strangers have been and we were in a pandemic. But one house had a really neat idea. They created a chute from their porch to the end where the sidewalk was. And what it was is that they would just put the candy in a chute. It was already wrapped in everything, and then kids could just pick it up at the bottom. They also created a gigantic spider that they controlled with a string, and it would drop down on you and it would scream and the kids would freak out, and it was a whole lot of fun. And they still do it. Ever since COVID, that was the consistent way of trick-or-treating for them at their home, which is super great. There's some houses on the street that do a take one. I'm not sure how honest people are with those. We're pretty honest, but if the children are by themselves trick-or-treating, who knows what could happen? Totally gross, but I love decorating pumpkins. Sometimes I'll be a little bit more intricate and I'll do something crazy, and other times I just really want to do a silly face. But what I really like about carving pumpkins is the fact that afterwards we get to clean all of the guts off of pumpkin seeds. Because my dad would cook the pumpkin seeds and then we'd get to have like a little snack, and it really made like the season feel extra special. I don't even know how he cooked them. I just remember as a kid, he'd be like, all right, they're out of the oven. And I would go and I would just grab them and I would eat them. I'm not sure how many pumpkin seeds you're technically allowed to eat or how many you should eat, but it was absolutely amazing. And I've never injured myself making a jack-o'-lantern before. I also like painting pumpkins, which makes them last longer because then they aren't slowly rotting from the inside. I know that there's things that you can like spray inside of pumpkins and stuff to slow the rotting process, but painting pumpkins also is like a whole lot of fun, super fun. And some of it's easier for children who don't want to, don't want to take that chance and hurt yourselves with them. let's talk about some favorite Halloween movies. There's many different genres of Halloween movies out there. There's horror, drama, thriller, children and family, overall spooky. And if you're like me, when you're growing up and you're a kid, you don't exactly get to watch a lot of the horror movies. Now, my parents did end up letting me watch Chucky at a very, very young age, as well as South Park, and although that may not be horror or Halloween in general, when I saw Kenny go to hell in the movie, I did cry my eyes out, and my dad took out the VHS and said, "You're not ready for this." But as a kid, my favorite Halloween movie and Halloween tradition with my family was Hocus Pocus. We would either pop popcorn and eat that, or with the pumpkin seeds, like we could have just finished carving pumpkins and we were eating pumpkin seeds, or we were watching it while we were carving pumpkins. The possibilities are endless. We would find our VHS. Okay. I was born in 97. I didn't get a DVD player until I was much, much older. Okay, so we had VHS tapes the whole time. I also didn't have cable. Most of the time when I was at my house, I only had cable at my grandmother's house. And that's totally fine. 3 channels is just enough to pop on a VCR and you could watch all the VHS tapes that you had. So imagine, as a child, let's say 5 or 6 years old, you just finished carving pumpkins. They're in the oven, you can smell it. Your mom's making popcorn. You pop in the VHS tape and you find out, oh God, you never rewound it, so you gotta rewind it all over again. So you gotta wait a few minutes. And then finally, the grainy opening of that movie. And then you get to just sit there with your family and you get to watch this classic, which at the time they didn't realize it was gonna be a classic, but it was amazing. And it's still one of my favorite Halloween movies of all time. But you got to give it to some of the other ones. The Halloween franchise in itself, I mean, its name is the name. I didn't watch all of them. I watched the Rob Zombie one the most, but it still takes the cake. Friday the 13th, you don't have to wait for Halloween to watch that, okay? That is Friday the 13th. You can watch it on any Friday the 13th. The possibilities are endless. We can have multiple a year, okay? As for, we gotta love the stop motion ones because there's Frankenweenie and Corpse Bride and Nightmare Before Christmas. I get to watch it half the year because I'll watch it at Halloween all the way until January because it's a Christmas movie too. It's a Halloween and a Christmas movie and I love it. Some other ones that I really like, Monster House was one of my all-time favorites, paired with like Paranorman. That's also Paranorman and Coraline are also in the stop motion and they're great. The ending of Paranorman is hilarious and I'm really happy to say for the anniversary this year they're doing a short at the beginning of the movie that they just recently animated in order to celebrate it, and I kind of want to go to the movie theaters in order to see it. I think it'll be great. Trick or Treat with Little Sam Hain, Little Pumpkin Boy. Really good. If you haven't seen it, it's got a lot of cool, like, Halloween stories 'cause it's based off of a comic book. And Sookie from True Blood's in it, so that's fun. But spoiler, she's not a vampire, which is kind of interesting. Sweeney Todd, Sleepy Hollow, any of the Addams Family. I'm talking black and white Addams Family, animated, Addams Family Values, live action. I like that one the most. And we can't forget Scary Godmother. That awful, awful animation style where we were first figuring out how the hell it worked. The same as like when Shrek first came out, like we were just getting into the CGI entirely of animated movies, and it's still one of my favorite ones to watch every year. Not to mention, it's on YouTube for free. You ain't gotta rent it or nothing. It's on there, okay? And if we think about like the television specials, back in the day, I don't think that they do it anymore, but back in the day, they used to do a lot of shows specials where like 2 shows would combine with one another, or 3 or 4, because we had one in Sweet Life and Zack and Cody that was like That's So Raven, and who else was it? And Hannah Montana, and it was crazy. But they have Halloween specials. Same thing that went with like SpongeBob. They always have specials for different holidays. We got the Hashling Slasher, and you name it. Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy is spooky and kooky all year round, but they do have specific Halloween like specials and movies, like one for Oogie Boogie. Well, the Boogeyman, he's not really all that scary. And Jack, who has a pumpkin head, who only did tricks and no treats. They actually made a game for it on CartoonNetwork.com where you had to fight all of the pumpkin people, and you had to like get to the end. And I can't remember. I think it's called Jack's Revenge, something along those lines. I can ramble on and on about the most amazing Halloween favorites and movies that I could think of. And although I didn't say a lot of horror movies, power to ya if you like them. I like some old ones really, like Children of the Corn, Jeepers Creepers. I love all the Chucky movies. I'm a Chucky fangirl. I've got a Good Guy doll right next to me.
My favorite Halloween memory has got to be when I was 4 or 5, and my deadbeat dad thought that Halloween was a satanic holiday, and he wouldn't let us celebrate. So my mom had us dress up, and she went behind each door of her house and had us knock and pass us out candy.
What does Halloween feel like to me? I wish I could bottle this feeling. It's the feeling of the golden hour as it evaporates into a chilling twilight. Cozy sweaters under cheap costumes. Mom didn't want us to freeze. Thanks, Mom. It feels as if you somehow swallowed an invincibility potion for the night and can do anything you want because tonight you're a Power Ranger or a dinosaur, not just some little kid. Halloween is a slightly congested nose at the end of the night as you drink a hot apple cider. It's the best feeling I have ever experienced with any season.